This week on World Traveler Cooking, we're going to make bratwurst. Now, I have a few difficulties with this I'll get into in a moment, but in general, if you have a meat grinder and stuff, it's not actually that difficult. What I have here is a kilogram of pork shoulder, a kilogram of pork belly without the skin. It looks like they did a good job of removing it. Then I have some water, about 100 milliliters. I have about 40 grams of salt, about 4 grams of pepper. It looks like about a tablespoon, about 4 grams, so about half a nutmeg, 4 grams of coriander, that looks like about 2 tablespoons, and 2 cloves of garlic. In addition, sometimes people use something called pickle salts, which is a mixture of sodium chloride and nitrite. It's not necessary if you're going to eat the sausages soon, but if you do use it, they'll keep better. Then, of course, I have my sausage casing. I have one issue here, and that is that I'm not really quite sure how thick the sausage casing is. Well, I guess we'll find out whether this is going to be nurnbergers or whether they'll be the thicker bratwursts. So let's go ahead and get started. So here I have diced this. I'm going to go throw it in the freezer for like 15 minutes while I work on my spice mixture. This is just to keep this as cool as it can get. And then we'll come back and we'll start the grinding process. So now I'm going to, I've ground the nutmeg. I'm going to crush the coriander. I could do this on a ulik, but I think this will work a little better. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to add the salt, and pepper, and I'm going to mix these all together. And then I'll be back. So here we have a relatively coarse grinding here. If I wanted a finer grind, I'd probably do it in a food processor. At any rate, now let's go ahead and get started grinding the meat. Now, one thing that's super important here is temperature control. So here, so you can see, I've actually frozen some ice underneath this bowl. This will keep everything nice and cold while we're running. The big issue here is we don't want the fat to get too soft. So now I'm going to grind all of this through the 1/4 inch, that's the 6mm die. And we'll go ahead and grind all this meat. Okay, so here we're through the first part. I've taken half of this out and I'm going to grind it again. And then we should be ready to mix in the spices. So here is the basic ground meat. Half of it's been ground twice. Next I'll put it in the mixing bowl. We'll use the paddle and we'll do this. If you want to do this by hand, it's going to be a lot more work. Typically in that case you're going to mix everything up by squeezing it together like this. And then you'll stir it in one direction until you see the threads form. So now I've added everything. Wait. So now I've added my spice mixture and I'm going to add about 100 milliliters of water. And some people actually use, I'm going to add the ice because I've been storing it in the freezer just to get it cool. Some people actually use sparkling water, but I'm just going to use still today. Obviously, if you're using sparkling water, you can put it in the freezer. So then we're just going to run this with a flat paddle for about a few minutes and let the water absorb and the proteins start to be pulled apart. Now we need this to be a relatively loose paste. This is too tight, so I'm going to add a bit more water here and we'll just keep running this for a bit. So while I am doing that, I'm going to go ahead and start soaking my hog casings. And basically I'm just going to soak these for half an hour in water and then I will rinse them. You can rinse both the inside and the outside, but this kind of gets rid of any of the salt used to prepare them and it helps them kind of expand to their full size. I actually don't know what size these are, so we might get Nurnberger bratwursts instead of like the full-size ones. Let's see. So just to show you what this looks like consistency-wise, we have what's a fairly soft and pliable, almost like a loose dough, except it's meat. And this is an emulsion of the water, the fat, and the protein. So we're going to stuff this into our sausage casings, and then we'll be ready to cook some of these and dry them out. Now, if you want to taste and adjust, you just take a little bit of this, fry it up, and since my sausage casings may be a little small, I might not end up using all of it, in which case I'll probably throw it in the freezer and use it for maltation later. So now I have tied both ends off, and sometimes you're going to get these air bubbles in here. What I like to do is to try to work them into a place in between links, like this, and then you can just take like a paring knife or a pin or something and just poke right in there. And then you can squeeze the air out and twist your links separate. So we're going to do this. Just going to twist links around. And I'm not going for perfectly same size links here, because I was originally kind of going for, okay, here's another case where, and now for the taste test. This is pretty good. A hair on the salty side. I attribute that actually to the difficulty I have working with the pork, the hog skins here in Indonesia more than the recipe. So if I were making it next time, I'd cut down on the salt a little bit. But it's within the range of what I've had in Germany, so this is good. The seasoning is pretty much right on. Yeah, this is delicious. I'm definitely going to make this many more times. So if you find this content interesting, I hope I've earned a like and a subscription from you. And please check out my Patreon page, where you can support my work and in return get early access to some of my videos. At any rate, if you make a dish like this, I'd love to hear what you do differently. I think that's always great when we share our tips. Recipes in the description. Bon appetit, and see you next week.